We have been talking this whole month about space clearing. So the things that we have been talking about is how Reiki can space clear, and then also why you need to space clear. What are the reasons that we either feel called to space clear, or the different reasons that maybe we should space clear. So we've talked about that, and then we've also talked about how Reiki can clear a space. And also how Reiki fills a space back up, and also why that can be important to do. So those are kind of the things that we've talked about already this month. And it's really interesting because, Colleen and I always kind of talk about the topics that we're going to talk about on the Distance Reiki Share. And we switched the order that we were going to talk about things. And I know now that it's because we have the equinox coming up, overnight tomorrow night. And then on the 22nd is the actual first day of autumn here in the Northern Hemisphere. I know we have some people joining from the Southern Hemisphere, so it would be the first day of spring for you. But equinoxes, solstices are a great time to kind of do this work, allowing this previous season to, kind of release and setting intentions for a new season. And so what we're going to be talking about today are some of the more traditional ways that when we talk about space clearing that we think about. So, we have a list of those ways, and then also how Reiki can kind of support them. So I think one of the biggest ways that we are in these communities are very familiar with space clearing is smudging is one term for it, or smoke clearing. And so, we kind of wanted to talk about this would be like, I know we put in the thing, it's like 10 ways that we are on how to space clear. This is maybe a subcategory of a few under those 10 ways. And so I think many of us are familiar with smudging or clearing with white sage, or like Palo Santo is another really popular way to smoke clear. I also know that there is conversation around, white sage and Palo Santo, and how we can maybe either smoke clear in our own way from our own traditions, and how we can look at that. So definitely, using white sage and using Palo Santo are very popular forms to space clear, not just like a space, but also our own energy and our own self. One of the things to know though about like these rituals is that smoke clearing is actually pretty universal. It's cross-cultural and it is ancient. And so there's a variety of ways to smoke clear. So like in Celtic tradition, it is called seining or fire seining, and they use different things. And if I'm mispronouncing that, you can let me know if it's because I know in Gaelic, things can be pronounced differently. So, in that tradition, they traditionally use juniper and other things that grow in the region because, previously to like our current culture, we weren't able to have a smoke clearing, that we could use herbs and things like that from different parts of the world. So that's a big thing to know about the different ways to smoke clear, is that you can use plants and herbs and things like that that grow in your region. So here in the Pacific Northwest, one of the traditional things, at least in the western side of the Pacific Northwest, is cedar. So there's cedar. I know Oregon grape has been used traditionally. So there's a variety of different types of plants that you can use that you might even be able to find in your backyard for smoke clearing. I know in the western half of Oregon, it's a very different climate, and juniper grows there. And also there's a different type of sage that grows there. So like my husband's family has a cabin over in Eastern Oregon, and there's a sage that grows there that is very abundant and very native, and it's actually even on their property. So, you know, when we go over there, I can collect some of that sage to bring home for me to use in my smoke clearing rituals. Um, in smoke clearing, in like Asia, in many Asian cultures, they use things such as incense, and have for you know, many thousands of years, to not only space clear but also for an honoring of like ancestral things. They'll use, you know, different herbs that grow native to their regions. You know, there's also things that like they will use smoke clearing traditionally, like thyme and rosemary, like even in medical settings. They will use uh, smoke clearing for crop protection. At least traditionally, they did that for frost and crop protection from insects and things like that. So there's so many different ways that you can do this. Maybe you have lavender that's growing. Maybe you have thyme that's growing. Maybe you have rosemary or cedar, or, you know, in different parts of the country, you're going to have different ways and different things that grow around you. In different parts of the world, you're going to have different things that grow around you that you can also use for smoke clearing. In Catholicism, they use frankincense. So it's not just, you know, it's not just for kind of these more ancient practices or indigenous practices. It is also, you know, in the kind of more recent religious practices as well. So smoke clearing is something that you can really connect in with, and you can connect in with also potentially, you know, your ancestral history around it. And you can look up how do I, you know, use cedar to smoke clear? Do I need to dry it first? Are these things that I need to do that can really help me in smoke clearing? Is there a part of my ancestry that I want to connect in with? Like for me, I have Celtic ancestry. So do I want to connect in with that to learn how to smoke clear in that tradition? So there are a lot of ways to be able to smoke clear, and it is a really, really amazing way to clear your space. And one of the ways that many of us know how to clear our space, we're very familiar with this tradition. So Colleen or Danny, I didn't know if you wanted to have anything you wanted to add to that.
Well, also that one of the things I really learned a lot about a couple years ago when our fires were so bad is that we did that also by boiling the herbs and the cedar, and that was clearing the space as well. So I think that that's another way you can consider it. Let's say you're in a situation where you would like to use the herb for the clearing, but it's not appropriate to have smoke. It may be appropriate to have some type of water or a mist, something like that as well.
Well, that's perfect segue, Colleen, because that was going to be the next way that we can
Oh, good.
um, is many people space clear through water and the boiling of the herbs, or through essential oils. And why can't I think of it's not a humidifier. I can't think of the word that, you know, does the mist, diffuser. So that's another way that you can space clear, is through essential oils and through diffusing. And there are these specific herbs that are great for that. I'm not an expert in essential oils. I know that there are probably people here that are, and the different ways that you can space clear. You know, cedar would be one that would come directly to mind. Frankincense, I know these are a few different ones that exist either in the essential oils, and I'm sure there's other ones and other you know, combinations and rituals that you know, essential oil experts have with them. And so you can always either research that or reach out to somebody that you may know that does essential oils. Or like Colleen said, during the fires, boiling the cedar was immensely helpful. It was crazy how much it cleansed the air. We could feel a palpable difference in the air when we had cedar going, and when we didn't, except for the one time that Colleen forgot the cedar was boiling and it the water dried out, and then we had a whole different issue. So don't do that.
We went back to smoke clearing.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It
don't
was like, oh,
don't do that
shocker,
one.
like I never leave things on the stove and forget.
Yeah. So I know that she does that quite often. Rice is a big one until she finally got a rice cooker. And so there are the different ways that you can use plant medicine. I've seen, a few people in the chat talk about plant medicine, talk about, herbal tinctures, herbal ways to space clear. And so that is another way that you can use things even that are right around you, flower essences, things like that, where you're in this kind of sacred relationship with the plants, with the flowers, and you can, use those to space clear as well. So that's another way that you could potentially space clear. And then another way, and this is one of those that it is part of the 10 reasons, but there are sub sections to it, is sound healing. So we did talk last week, I believe it was, about how to use chanting and toning, specifically with the Reiki symbols, into a space or into a room, on how to space clear. And so that is one way that you can do that, about using your voice, about using that chanting or toning. And you can, even if you don't know how to do that, or, maybe are a little insecure about your voice and how that might sound, you can even just say into the room, like the power symbol, the mental emotional symbol, and the distance symbol. So just know that if you have that intention, that if you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable about chanting or toning, that you can just even say those into the space or say those into the room, and that will work. If you are more experienced in chanting and toning, especially those that are in spiritual practices that really, really include the chanting and toning, that is another way to space clear and support your space, and kind of uh, really have the intention of having this sacred space for the work that you're about to do. Or maybe you just know that there's like an energy that I just need to lift out of this space. And so you're using the power of your voice to do that. And so that is one way to use sound healing. We also have other ways to use sound healing, such as musical instruments. For those of you that, do drumming, Reiki drumming, those are ways that you can clear a space. And I know that there's certain frequencies that are really good for lifting the energy of the space, as far as, how the drum beat, how you're doing the drum beat. There are crystal bowls that you can use to clear a space, singing bowls that you can use to clear a space. That's another way to clear space using sound healing. And a lot of what these things are doing is they're lifting through the vibration and the wavelengths of the sound, is they are lifting the vibration and the sound of the room, the vibration, the frequency, and the wavelengths of the space. And so that is another way that you can space clear. And I'll get a little bit into how you can use Reiki in all of these ways to support this work. And so, yeah, that's a great question, Meg, about if candles work. And absolutely, we're going to talk a little bit about a space clearing bowl that Colleen does, and we're going to go into that more next week. But that's using the power of fire in the spaces to space clear. So I think as long as you are, you just kind of set the intention that through the candle, that what is needing to be released is being, kind of burned through the fire in a very safe and protective way. Safety first with all of that kind of stuff. But I think absolutely candles can work to space clear. So then the other thing with the sound healing is that tuning forks are also really great for space clearing. And I know that there's a lot of sound healing instruments, and in all of these categories, there are things that I am leaving out because kind of each of the categories can be really expansive. There's a ton of different ways in each of the categories that you can do sound healing. So I know that there's instruments that, definitely are great at sound healing that I didn't mention here. And so really when it comes to space clearing, there's so many different ways that you can do it that it really is just about kind of what you feel called to. Also, sometimes it can be about what do you have around you? It's like, I feel like I need to space clear. I may just have the time and I'm just going to use Reiki really quick. Or I have my singing bowl here. I'm just going to give it a ding and clear the space. But I don't have like anything for smoke clearing around me right now. And that's going to be a longer process. So, all of them are really great to do. It's really what you're called to, what you have time for, what you have around you. And then all of these things can be combined in so many different ways. So as I said, Colleen is going to talk a little bit about her Epsom salt bowl, and then we're going to, actually kind of show that next week and how to do your own. But before I do that, I wanted to talk about one more way that you can not only space clear, but you can use for also keeping the energy kind of like that container of space, and that's crystals. So many of us have crystals, and we use them in our practices. We use them in our Reiki work, in our Reiki practices. And so you can use different types of crystals to clear, and different types of crystals that you can set the intention that they're clearing a space. And also after clearing the space, holding a certain energy within the space. So as far as, clearing or blocking kind of those denser energies, and again, this is a category where there's a ton of information and I can't mention it all here, but things like black tourmaline is a protection stone, or black kyanite, or smoky quartz. These can be protection stones, and selenite is another one that can be really good for clearing and also even discharging our own energy. So that's one that we use frequently when we feel like we have a lot of energy running, or we just feel like we need to allow the stone to carry it for us. I have selenite right here. Colleen has a selenite wand that she'll kind of put, there's Colleen's wand that she'll kind of put into the earth. Colleen, go ahead and
I'm
unmute
going
your.
to say I need to talk so they can see me. So here's the wand that I have. And speaking of equinox, for me, this really has a lot of moon energy. And so I'll actually invite the moon energy to kind of flow through me, flow through me through the selenite and into the earth to clear, and even use the word discharge some of the excess energy.
Go ahead and talk, Danny, so we can see, and your cat.
Of course, right when I'm going to talk. So here's my selenite that sits by me.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I don't think it can get in the water. I think someone was asking.
No, it melts.
There's definitely stones and water that don't mix. So that would be something that you would want to look up. And actually, Danny, seeing your salt lamp behind you, that's another way that is going to, help neutralize the space, clear the space kind of on that continual basis. Also, our crystal Reiki grids. So those are ways that you can set intentions, clear space, but also charge space. So those are different ways that you can do that. Now, one of the ways that, and then of course, before we move on, of course, quartz is also considered a neutral stone. So there are a ton of ways that you can set intention with the different crystals, and especially those neutral ones. And then there are ways to clear your crystals and different items. So, many people put them out in the full moon to clear and charge your crystals. Some put them in the earth to clear and charge your crystals. There are some that put certain types of crystals in water. Like I said before, you're going to definitely want to look that up about which crystals go well in water and which don't. And so there's that. And then even just sunlight can really help to clear and charge your crystals. So like, because we have this time frame of the equinox coming up, we can utilize kind of that energy to not just clear our crystals, but also charge our crystals with the intentions that we may have for the next season, the next kind of cycle that we will be going through. And then you can use all of these in combination. So you can use any of those smoke clearing techniques to also clear your crystals and, those kinds of things where you can use them all in tandem. You can use them together and use what you have, what you are called to do all of this kind of clearing work. So then the other thing about this, let's talk about the Epsom salt bowl really quick. So we are going to go into this more in depth next week, Colleen, but do you want to just talk quickly about the Epsom salt bowl and how you use that for space clearing?
Yes, and like I say, I'll demonstrate it next week. I need to be kind of prepared with it, but and then we'll put it on YouTube. I did a video, it was like the first video I ever did, and you can tell because I was super nervous and it's only a minute. But anyway, using a fire safe bowl. So I've even used just my kitchen bowls and, like oven safe bowls. And also then I have some specific kind of ceremonial bowls that I use for this too. And I use Epsom salts and also 91% rubbing alcohol, and use that for space clearing. One of the things that we didn't say earlier with all of the smoke clearing rituals, and this one in particular, is we are using Reiki energy along with the techniques, the tools, and the herbs, or like in this case, where I'm using the Epsom salts. And it's again another kind of fire ceremony that, or fire technique that I use. I do use Reiki energy to actually do the work, because the other thing that I like with Reiki energy is while it clears, it fills the space at the same time, because you really want both, and I like the act of specifically going back in after I've done clearing, or while I'm doing clearing, that I go and fill the space back up, but also knowing that Reiki will already do that too is really beneficial, because sometimes we do these things on the fly. Sometimes when I notice, like I use this specific technique with the bowl and the Epsom salts and the alcohol, because I do light it on fire, I use it a lot in my bathroom. Like I'll put it in the shower and just walk away. And, because it's like, that's one of the places that you can go off into all different thoughts, and your thoughts can get stuck in the space. And so if I notice that I get into the shower and all of a sudden my thoughts turn negative, I go, and because my husband and I share the same shower, it could be his thoughts stuck in the shower, that I'll just set this bowl up, do some Reiki over it, say clear the space, and let it go in there and burn. So we'll show more about that next week and go into some of the specific, like, here's what we do with Reiki. At the same time, all of it can be done on the fly. So we're just giving you a lot of different options. I like the ritual if I am able to do a whole like kind of ceremony around the clearing. But also, sometimes you just have to get it done. So.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. That was where, we were going to go into too, is about filling the space back up. And this is like a perfect example too about how you can charge all of these things with Reiki. We actually wrote an article about it that Danny's going to post in the chat for any of you that are listening later. It is also on our website, reikilifestyle.com. It's under Reiki Library, under articles, and then it is called Charge Your Sacred Objects with Reiki. And so this is a perfect time as we're moving into equinox, where we also like to set intentions. It's not just about clearing space. It's also about setting intentions and filling back up with Reiki, or filling back up with your energy medicine practices. And so once you've cleared your crystals, how do you set the intentions for, as we're moving into fall here in the northern hemisphere, or if you're moving into spring in the southern hemisphere? How do we clear these? How do we clear these spaces, and how do we set our intentions? And then using Reiki energy using energy to also, put that kind of divine light behind our intentions, and putting that life force, vitality, that connection to the divine behind our intentions, and allowing Reiki to support all of it. And so even if I'm using, let's say, like a smoke clearing technique or smoke cleansing technique, I'm always going to even do a quick, even if it's Reiki on, like we were talking about before, or a quick Gasho meditation, or like a Reiki Ho, or I'm activating my symbols, because the Reiki is going to support me in these ways. When we were doing, if you're like doing the water with the herbal, like we were talking about with the cedar, or if you're using essential oils with a diffuser, any of those things, you can just quickly charge it with Reiki, just how we charge anything else with Reiki, so that when that is disseminating throughout the room, it's also sending Reiki and those intentions with it. Sound healing is the same. Chanting and toning is the same. And again, if you need to do it on the fly, that's okay. And if you are able to go into your rituals and your practices with it, that's great too. Also, with charging your crystals, that article is really great on how Reiki can clear, but also how Reiki can charge with your intentions. And a lot of that even just looks like, holding your crystal in between your hand. You have Reiki going, holding your crystal in between your hands, and just putting your intentions and Reiki energy into it. So that's kind of the Cliff's Notes version of it. And sometimes you do have to do it just quickly like that. Sometimes that is a reality of the situation. And then other times, I might put it out in the full moon and then spend a good amount of time the next day where I'm, putting the Reiki energy into it, and maybe even putting my intentions into it. So there's all of these ways. I saw lots of different great suggestions in the chat. I saw somebody talk about clapping in a room. That absolutely can stir up the ki in the room, which can be really helpful. There's, different feng shui techniques that can be used for space clearing, or again, getting that ki or that chi moving within a space. So, there's so many different ways that we just can't mention them all. If there is a way that you feel called to, you can also research it, Google it and say, well, like, I'm interested in kind of this thing that they talked about or somebody else talked about. How would I go about doing that? And then of course, using the Reiki energy to support you in any way that you may feel called to space clear. All right. So Danny or Colleen, is there anything else that you would like to add before we go into the invocation?
Oh, great topic. And bells too. Yeah, that was bells, drums. Yeah, bells. I have some that are my little.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, like I said, we don't have the time to, I mean, literally we could talk for hours and hours on this topic. So we don't have the time to talk about every single way to do it. Go ahead, Danny.
Oh, I was just going to say, Teresa Bolch, I don't think she's here today, but she's an amazing sound healer here in Eugene. And she brought her drum to our Reiki circle last time. And that just was amazing. I mean, just the drumming was just like a house felt amazing. We all felt amazing. So yeah, drumming is a good one.
Yeah. Thanks, Danny.
Who is that, Danny?
Teresa Bolch.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah. She's usually in her circle. So yeah.
So Rava, yes, it also includes land clearing. And so you can even be in one space and invite it to do the clearing on the land. Reiki also will do that, and it will do that at a distance as well. You know, that's another subject, and happy to talk about that again another time, because I do find that that can be a significant part of my work as a practitioner, is clearing the land in areas where there has been trauma. So yeah. And also with all of this, we'll go back to the filling the space back up, because it's not all just about healing what needs to be released. It's also about empowering the frequencies of these higher frequencies of energy, you know, automatically does. But that is the other intention with it, is that it is amplifying, activating, and empowering the frequencies of the space that are the higher frequencies that Reiki energy really provides. And that the other thing that happens with it is it entrains, and entrainment means it's going to elevate our frequencies to those higher frequencies in the space. So our bodies and our life force will naturally resonate with the higher frequencies of that Reiki energy. It will entrain to it. And so that's the other purpose that happens behind all of this, you know, and Reiki naturally does that.
Yeah.
The ways that I've done land clearing, and then I know we need to go to the invocation, Robyn, but one of the ways that I've done a lot with land clearing is with Honsha Shonin, and going back to the land before there was anything on it, and really empowering the nature of the land before, say, there was human conflict or challenge or trauma on the land. And so using the Reiki energy to bring the land to that state, because the land itself really, you know, we can't really, what I've seen as a practitioner anyway, is that the land itself still holds its energy, but the frequencies of the space itself on the land, you know, is what can affect us. And so we can actually use Reiki energy to empower the frequencies of the land before the event or events occurred.
Yeah, and also divine beings, if you would like to, you know, ask divine beings to kind of stay on the land as well. And to answer people's questions, this works for all different types of things. So it can be space, but it can also be ourselves. I use, these smoke clearing techniques and Reiki energy and, equinox, things like that to, to do this like all the time. So, it also, somebody had asked about technology. Yes, absolutely. Clearing your technology, sending it through, time and space. So before, after, above, below, within. So it works, and using the distance symbol to do that. So it works in a variety of different ways, and it works for, a variety of different things. So it's kind of like, going into your imagination, going into your own ways. Like, I wonder if those techniques would work for this. It's okay to wonder that, and it's okay to try it out, and listening to your own guidance and Reiki, around that. So those are, all, different ways that you can do it. The sky's the limit around it. And so again, just going to what you're called to, and the different things that you need it for too. That's the other thing. The different things that you need it for. We talked last week, excuse me, we talked last week about Reiki trails. And that's, I think that if it's not up on our YouTube, it will be soon. And so, talking about land clearing and different ways that you can do this, and also filling space, that's another way that you can utilize Reiki for this.